They called it a routine mission. Apollo 13, April 11th, 1970. Saturn V shook the coast and climbed into a bright Florida sky. 3 men rode the fire: Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, Fred Hayes. They were calm, they were ready, they were leaving Earth for the moon. Inside the command module was a clean world of switches and numbers. They practiced the checklists until muscle memory felt like a song. Capcom spoke from Houston in a steady voice. 13, you are go. The moon waited like a pale coin in black water. For 2 days, the ship was healthy. Television broadcasts showed a small family in space. They joked, they ate, they floated. The crew moved between the command module Odyssey and the lunar module Aquarius. Earth turned slowly below like a blue lantern. Night fell on the 3rd day. Routine work: stir the oxygen tanks, log the readings. At 55 hours and 54 minutes into the flight, Jack Swigert flipped the switch. There was a bang, a dull push, a tremor through the hull. Lights flickered. Alarms woke up like startled birds. Jim Lovell looked out a window and saw something drifting away, white, glittering, venting into the void. He said the line that tied Earth to their hearts: "Houston, we have a problem." And just like that, the quiet mission became a survival story.
Numbers began to fall: oxygen pressure, power, water. A fuel cell had failed. The command module was dying. They could not go to the moon anymore. They had to come home. Flight Director Gene Kranz stood at the console in mission control. He wore a white vest and an iron comm. He listened. He sorted data from noise. He chose a path. Work the problem. Failure is not an option. The plan changed in minutes. Shut down Odyssey to save what little power remained. Move into Aquarius. The lunar module became a lifeboat. It had its own batteries. It had its own oxygen. It was built for 2 men for 2 days. Now it had to keep 3 men alive for 4. They aimed the combined ship for a free return around the moon. Use the moon's pull to bend them back toward Earth. Light the descent engine at the right moment. Hold to a razor-thin corridor in space. Too shallow and they would skip away. Too steep and they would burn. Inside Aquarius it was very cold. They powered down everything that was not needed. No cockpit lights, no heaters, no fans to lull the mind. Water rations were small. Food was hard to swallow. Frost gathered on walls. Breath smoked in front of lips. They wore suits and hope. Carbon dioxide rose in the cabin. The lithium hydroxide canisters in Aquarius were round. The spare canisters in Odyssey were square. The ports did not match. Engineers in Houston built a filter on the floor with tape, plastic, a sock, and a manual cover. They sent the instructions by voice. The crew built it exactly. The numbers fell. They could breathe again.
The ship needed a correction burn. They had to point the engine by hand. There was no guidance computer running. They used a small window and the Earth as a reference. Lovell held the attitude. Hayes called the angles. Swigert timed the seconds. The engine fired. The ship trembled. It was enough. They swung behind the far side of the moon. Radio went silent. No one on Earth could help for a while. On the dark side, they were the farthest humans had ever been from home. They looked out at a gray world that they would not touch. "Gentlemen," someone said softly, "we are not landing today." They looked instead for the thin line of sunrise. It meant return. They came out of blackout and the voices returned. Houston sounded closer than the stars. More burns were planned. One called PC+2, one called Mid-Course 6. Each burn shaped a narrow path through the sky. Back in Houston, another team worked a different problem. Odyssey was dark and cold. Batteries had to be warm enough to wake. Navigation had to be rebuilt without the usual stars and programs. They wrote a checklist that was short as a prayer. They rehearsed the power-up again and again on the ground. Every switch order, every second. The crew would get one try.
They separated Aquarius before re-entry. The little ship had saved their lives. It drifted away like a tired lantern. Lovell watched it and said goodbye. Thank you, Aquarius. Then they moved into Odyssey and began the wake-up. Power returned in a careful sequence. Gyros aligned, screens warmed. Guidance came back to life and held steady. They jettisoned the service module and saw the wound. A whole panel was gone. The explosion had peeled the skin from the ship. They were lucky to be here at all. Re-entry was a narrow door. Odyssey hit the corridor and began to fall. Radio blackout began. Ionized air wrapped the capsule and swallowed every word. Houston waited. The world waited. Seconds stretched and then became long. The blackout lasted longer than expected. People held their breath. A tone cracked through the speakers, then voices. Odyssey, this is Houston. Okay, Joe. Parachutes bloomed in a bright sky. Red, white, blue. The Pacific received them with a slow splash. Helicopters flew. Sailors cheered. 3 men returned to the wide comfort of gravity and air. Cold hands warmed around cups. The ship called Iwo Jima carried them back. Families cried. The world exhaled. What does this mean by a small fire at night? It means calm can lead